The prison station called Void's Edge floated in the dark space between stars. It was a place where the galaxy's worst criminals went to die, but the real purpose of this station was not justice. It was entertainment. Captain Hyun-woo of the Earth Defense Corps had been awake for 3 days since his capture. His hands were tied with energy chains that burned his skin when he moved too much. The cell was small and dark, with walls made of metal that felt cold against his back. He could hear sounds from above. Crowds cheering, screams that ended too quickly, the sound of metal hitting flesh. Sometimes there was silence that felt worse than the noise. "First time in the arena?" asked a voice from the cell next to his. Hyun-woo turned his head. Through the energy bars, he could see a woman with short black hair. She wore the torn uniform of an Earth Marine. Her left arm was wrapped in dirty cloth. "I'm Yuna," she said. "Used to be Sergeant Yuna before they caught me trying to rescue prisoners from their mining ships." "Captain Hyun-woo," he replied. "What is this place?" Yuna laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "This is where aliens come to watch things kill other things. They bet money on who dies first. The longer you last, the more they cheer." Another voice joined them. This one came from across the narrow hallway. "The guards say you're going to face the hunter," said a man with glasses that were cracked down the middle. "I'm Do-jin. I used to fix ships before they brought me here." "What's the hunter?" Hyun-woo asked. The other prisoners got quiet. Even the sounds from above seemed to stop for a moment. Yuna spoke first. "It's not from any world we know. The Vrex Empire made it in their labs. They wanted the perfect killer. Something that could think like a person but fight like a wild animal." Do-jin pushed his broken glasses up his nose. "It's 12 feet tall. Black claws as long as your arm. Teeth that can bite through steel. But the worst part is its eyes. They say it thinks, it learns. It remembers every person it kills." "How many?" Hyun-woo asked. "Over 200, Yuna whispered. "From 47 different worlds. The longest anyone lasted was 4 minutes. That was a Korthak warrior. They're supposed to be the strongest fighters in the galaxy." Hyun-woo closed his eyes. He thought about his ship, his crew. The mission that had gone wrong when they tried to map this sector of space. He thought about Earth and whether he would ever see blue skies again. "Where do they keep it?" he asked. Do-jin pointed down. 3 levels below us. In the deepest part of the station. It has its own arena down there. Big enough for it to run around, but not big enough to escape. They chain it up between fights, Yuna added. Heavy chains made from some kind of metal that can hold a battleship. The chains are attached to the walls and floor. Even something that strong can't break free. Hyun-woo stood up and walked to the front of his cell. The energy bars made a soft humming sound. Beyond them, he could see a long hallway with more cells. Some had aliens in them. Others held humans like him. "How long have you been here?" he asked. 6 months, Yuna said. "Almost a year," Do-jin replied. "They keep us alive because humans are rare out here. Good for special fights, but they save the best fighters for the hunter." "What makes them think I'm a good fighter?" Yuna smiled for the first time. "You're a ship captain. You fought 3 of their patrol ships before they caught you. Killed 12 of their pilots. Word travels fast in a place like this." The sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway, heavy boots on metal floors. The prisoners got quiet and moved to the back of their cells. Everyone except Hyun-woo. 3 alien guards stopped in front of his cell. They looked like giant insects with 4 arms each. Their armor was black and covered with spikes. One of them carried a weapon that glowed with blue energy. "Human," said the one in the middle. Its voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. "The warden wants to see you." The energy bars disappeared with a soft pop. Hyun-woo stepped out of his cell. The guards surrounded him but did not touch him. They walked down the hallway, past cells full of prisoners who watched with wide eyes. They took him up 3 levels in a lift that moved too fast. When the doors opened, Hyun-woo found himself in a room with windows that showed the stars outside. Behind a large desk sat something that looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird. "I am Warden Talvek," it said. Its voice was smoother than the guards, but still cold. "Welcome to Void's Edge. I want to speak to someone from the Galactic Confederation," Hyun-woo said. "I'm a prisoner of war. There are rules." Talvek made a sound that might have been laughter. "Rules? Human, you are far beyond the reach of rules here. This station does not exist on any official maps. No one knows you are here." The warden stood up and walked to the window. It was tall and thin, with skin that looked like green scales. "Do you know what makes humans special?" it asked. Hyun-woo said nothing. "Hope," Talvek continued. Other species, when they know they are going to die, they accept it. They prepare for death with dignity. But humans? Humans keep fighting even when fighting is useless. It makes for very good entertainment. When? Yenwu asked. Tomorrow. The hunter has not fed for 3 days. It will be very hungry. Talvek turned around and looked at Hyunwoo with yellow eyes. Try to last longer than 4 minutes. The crowd gets bored easily. The guards took Hyunwoo back to his cell. As they walked through the hallways, he could hear the sounds from the arena again. Something was fighting up there. Something was dying. Back in his cell, Yuna and Dojin waited for him. What did the warden want? Yuna asked. To tell me I fight tomorrow, Hyunwoo said. He sat down on the floor and leaned against the wall. I'm sorry, Dojin said quietly. Hyunwoo looked up at the ceiling. Somewhere above them, aliens were cheering for death. Somewhere below them, the hunter waited in its chains. And somewhere far away, Earth continued to spin around its sun, not knowing that one of its sons was about to die in the dark between the stars. But Hyunwoo was not thinking about dying. He was thinking about the warden's words, about hope, about what it meant to be human in a galaxy that saw humans as entertainment. Tomorrow, he would find out if being human was enough. The morning came too soon. Hyunwoo had not slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he could hear the sounds from the arena above. The cheering, the screaming, the sudden silence that always came at the end. Guards came for him when the lights in his cell changed from red to white. They were different guards this time, bigger, more weapons. They moved like they expected trouble. Time to go, human, one of them said. Hyunwoo stood up slowly. His body was stiff from sleeping on the metal floor. The energy chains around his wrists felt heavier than before. Good luck, Yuna whispered from her cell. Dojin just nodded. His broken glasses caught the light from the hallway. The guards led Hyunwoo through corridors he had not seen before. These hallways were wider. The walls were covered with screens that showed betting numbers. Pictures of past fights, names of creatures that had won, names of creatures that had died. They passed windows that looked down into smaller arenas. In one, 2 alien creatures were fighting with bladed weapons. In another, something that looked like a giant spider was chasing a running figure around obstacles. The crowds in the stands were cheering and waving colorful flags, but they did not stop at any of these arenas. They kept walking down stairs that spiraled into the deeper parts of the station, down hallways that got darker and quieter, down to where the real entertainment happened. The main arena was huge, much bigger than Hyunwoo had expected. The ceiling was so high he could not see it in the darkness above. The walls rose up in circles filled with thousands of seats. Aliens of every shape and size filled those seats. They were all looking down at the circular pit in the center. The pit was maybe 50 meters across. The floor was covered with sand that had dark stains in it. Some of the stains looked fresh. Around the edge of the pit was an energy barrier that glowed with purple light. Above that, the crowd pressed against safety railings, pointing and talking in languages Hyunwoo did not understand. Ladies and gentlemen, a voice boomed across the arena. The voice came from speakers hidden everywhere. It spoke in Galactic Standard, the language most aliens could understand. Today we have a special treat. A human warrior will face our greatest champion. The crowd roared. The sound was so loud that Hyunwoo felt it in his chest. On the other side of the pit, a large door was opening. It opened slowly like the mouth of some giant beast. Behind the door was darkness. But in that darkness, something was moving. The chains came first. Huge links of black metal that dragged across the stone floor with a sound like thunder. Each link was as big as Hyunwoo's head. The chains stretched back into the darkness, attached to something the crowd could not yet see. Then came the growling, low and deep like the sound of an earthquake. It made the sand in the pit shake. It made some of the smaller aliens in the crowd step back from their railings. Finally, the hunter stepped into the light. Hyunwoo had thought he was ready. Yuna and Dojin had told him what to expect. 12 feet tall, black claws, teeth like knives, but seeing it was different from hearing about it. The hunter was built like a nightmare. Its body was covered in dark fur that looked almost like metal. Its arms were longer than its legs, ending in hands that had 6 fingers each. Every finger had a claw that curved like a sword. Its head was shaped like a wolf's, but bigger, much bigger. When it opened its mouth, Hyunwoo could see rows of teeth that went back into its throat. But it was the eyes that made Hyunwoo's blood run cold. They were not the eyes of a wild animal. They were intelligent. They looked around the arena like they were studying every detail, planning, thinking. The hunter was attached to the chains in 3 places: around its neck, around its waist, around its left ankle. The chains were long enough to let it move around the pit, but not long enough to reach the walls, or so everyone thought. The crowd was going crazy now. Aliens were waving money in the air, making bets on how long the human would last. Some were shouting numbers. Others were making gestures that probably meant the same thing in their languages. A guard pushed Hyunwoo toward a smaller door on his side of the pit. "Get in there," the guard said. "Try not to die too fast." The crowd paid good money. The door opened. Hyunwoo stepped through it and found himself standing on the sand. The door closed behind him with a loud clang. He was alone in the pit with the hunter. Above them, the crowd got quiet. This was the moment they had all paid to see. The moment when the small human would realize how hopeless his situation was. The moment when he would run or beg or do something that would make them laugh. But Hyunwoo did not run. He did not beg. He stood in the center of the pit and looked at the hunter. The hunter looked back. For a long moment, nothing happened. The crowd started to murmur. Some aliens called out words that sounded like complaints. They wanted action. They wanted blood. The hunter took a step forward. The chains around its body made a soft clinking sound. Sand scattered under its huge feet. Hyunwoo stayed where he was. The hunter tilted its massive head to one side. Its ears, which were pointed like a wolf's, turned toward the human. It was listening, studying, trying to understand why this small creature was not afraid. Then Hyunwoo noticed something that made his heart beat faster. On the chains around the hunter's neck there were marks, scratches in the metal that looked fresh. The scratches were deep, like something had been rubbing against the chains for a long time. The hunter took another step forward. Now they were only 10 meters apart, close enough for Hyunwoo to see that the creature's fur was not just dark. It was covered in scars, old wounds that had healed badly, burns that looked like they came from energy weapons, marks that told the story of hundreds of fights. But there was something else. As the hunter moved, Hyunwoo could see that it was favoring its right leg. There was a small limp, an old injury that had never healed properly. This was not just a killing machine. This was a living being that had been hurt, again and again, for the entertainment of others. The crowd was getting louder now. They wanted the fight to start. Some were throwing things into the pit, small objects that bounced off the energy barrier and fell into the sand. The hunter looked up at the crowd. For just a moment, its intelligent eyes showed something that Hyunwoo recognized, something he had seen in the mirror during his darkest days as a soldier. Hatred not for him, for them, for the creatures in the stands who cheered for death. The hunter lowered its head and looked at Hyunwoo again. Its muscles tensed, its claws extended. The chains around its body went tight, and then with a sound like breaking thunder, the chain around its neck snapped. The crowd gasped. Some aliens jumped to their feet. Others started pushing toward the exits. The hunter straightened to its full height. Free of the neck chain, it looked even bigger, even more dangerous. The remaining chains around its waist and ankle suddenly seemed very small, but the hunter did not attack. It stood there, breathing hard, looking at the human who had not run, who had not begged, who was still standing in the center of the pit, waiting. Hyunwoo took a deep breath. He thought about Earth, about his crew, about Yuna and Dojin in their cells, probably listening to this fight on the prison's communication system. Then he took one step forward. The arena fell completely silent. The hunter's eyes widened slightly. In all its fights, in all the creatures it had killed, none had ever moved toward it. They had all tried to run. They had all tried to hide behind the barriers or beg for mercy. But this human was walking toward death like it was an old friend. Hyunwoo took another step, then another. With each step, he could see more details of the hunter's face, the intelligence in its eyes, the way its nostrils flared as it caught his scent, the way its head moved slightly, like it was trying to solve a puzzle. When they were only 3 meters apart, Hyunwoo stopped. He looked up into the hunter's eyes and spoke. "I know what you are," he said quietly. His voice was calm, steady. "You're not a monster. You're a prisoner, just like me." The hunter's ears twitched. It leaned its massive head down, bringing its face closer to the human's level. And for the first time since its creation, The hunter heard words that were not commands or threats or screams of fear. It heard understanding. The silence in the arena lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. Thousands of alien eyes watched as the human and the hunter stared at each other. No one moved. No one breathed. Then the hunter did something that shocked everyone watching. It sat down, not like an animal sits. It lowered itself carefully, keeping its eyes on Hyunwoo's face. Its massive legs folded under its body. The remaining chains clinked softly as it settled onto the sand. The crowd exploded into confused noise. Aliens were shouting at each other in dozens of languages. Some were angry that the fight was not starting. Others were scared that something was wrong with their champion. In the warden's viewing box high above the arena, Talvek was hitting buttons on a control panel. "What is it doing?" he hissed at his assistant. "Why is it not attacking?" The assistant, a small creature with too many eyes, was checking readings on a screen. "All systems show normal, Warden. The hunter's vital signs are stable. It appears to be waiting." Waiting for what? On the arena floor, Hyunwoo was asking himself the same question. The hunter had not moved since sitting down. It was watching him with those intelligent eyes like it was trying to read his thoughts. Slowly, carefully, Hyunwoo lowered himself to sit on the sand as well. He crossed his legs and placed his hands on his knees. The position made him look even smaller next to the hunter, but it also made him look calm, peaceful. The hunter tilted its head to the other side. Its ears swiveled forward, focusing on the human completely. "My name is Hyunwoo," the human said quietly. The arena was so quiet now that his voice carried to the nearest seats. "I don't know your real name. I don't think they ever gave you one." The hunter's nostrils flared again. It was taking in every detail of the human's scent. Fear was there, but it was old fear, fear that had been faced and conquered. What the hunter smelled mostly was sadness, and something else, something it had never encountered before. Respect. "You've killed a lot of beings," Hyunwoo continued, "but you didn't choose to. They made you. They chained you up and threw victims at you and cheered when you did what they wanted." The hunter's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in concentration. It was listening to more than just the words. It was listening to the tone, the feeling behind the sounds. In the crowd, some aliens were getting restless. They had paid to see violence. They had paid to see the famous human stubbornness crushed under the hunter's claws. Instead, they were watching what looked like a conversation. "Start the fight," someone shouted from the upper levels. "We want blood," called another voice. But other aliens were leaning forward in their seats. They had never seen anything like this before. The hunter had always been a simple killing machine. Pointed at something and watched that something die. This was different. This was strange. Talvek was getting angry. He pressed a button on his control panel and his voice boomed across the arena through the hidden speakers. "Hunter, attack the human, now!" The hunter's head snapped up toward the sound of the warden's voice. For a moment its eyes flashed with that hatred Hyunwoo had seen before. Then it looked back down at the human and made a sound. It was not a growl. It was not a roar. It was something softer, almost like a sigh. "They give you orders," Hyunwoo said, understanding. "But you're tired of taking them, aren't you?" The hunter leaned closer. Its massive head was now only an arm's length from Hyunwoo's face. The human could feel its breath, hot and smelling of metal. He could see his own reflection in its dark eyes. And then the hunter did something that no one expected. It spoke. The voice was deep and rough like stones grinding together. The words were in a language Hyunwoo did not recognize, but the meaning was clear from the tone. It was asking a question. Hyunwoo closed his eyes for a moment, thinking. When he opened them again, he began to speak in Korean, the language of his childhood. The language his mother had used to sing him to sleep. "나는 당신을 이해합니다," he said softly. "I understand you." The hunter's ears perked up. It had heard thousands of languages in this arena, screams and pleas and curses from across the galaxy. But it had never heard sounds like these. Soft sounds, gentle sounds. Hyunwoo continued speaking in Korean, telling the hunter about Earth, about blue skies and green grass, about families and friends and the feeling of being free. He spoke about his ship and his crew, about the mission that had brought him to this place. The hunter listened to every word. It did not understand the language, but it understood something deeper. It understood that this human was sharing something precious, something important. Minutes passed. The crowd grew more restless. Some aliens were demanding their money back. Others were threatening to leave. But many were still watching, fascinated by this strange scene. Talvik had had enough. He pressed another button on his control panel. Guards, enter the arena and force the fight to begin. Steel doors around the arena began to open. Armed guards in heavy armor stepped onto the sand. They carried weapons that crackled with energy, weapons designed to hurt even something as strong as the hunter. The moment the first guard's foot touched the sand, everything changed. The hunter's head whipped around to look at the guards. Its lips pulled back to show all of those knife-like teeth. A growl rumbled from deep in its chest, so low that it made the sand vibrate. But it did not attack the guards. Instead, it moved. Faster than anything that big should be able to move, the hunter positioned itself between Hyunwoo and the approaching guards. It rose to its full height, spreading its arms wide. The message was clear. To reach the human, they would have to go through the hunter first. Stand down, one of the guards shouted. Move away from the human. The hunter's only response was to growl louder. The guards raised their weapons. Energy beams lanced across the arena, striking the hunter in the chest and shoulders. The creature roared in pain and anger, but it did not move. It took the hits and stayed between the guards and Hyunwoo. That was when the remaining chains broke. The chain around the hunter's waist snapped first, then the one around its ankle. The creature was completely free for the first time since its capture, and the first thing it did was protect the human who had shown it kindness. The guards fired again, but the hunter was no longer an easy target. It moved like liquid lightning, dodging most of the shots and absorbing the others. Its claws flashed in the arena lights as it struck back. The first guard went down without a sound. The second managed to scream before the hunter's claws found him. The third tried to run, but there was nowhere to go in the arena. The crowd was in chaos now. Aliens were screaming and pushing toward the exits. Some were climbing over seats to get away faster. The sounds of panic echoed off the arena walls, but through it all the hunter kept one eye on Hyunwoo, making sure he was safe, making sure no harm came to the small human who had treated it like a person instead of a thing. When the last guard fell, the hunter turned back to Hyunwoo. There was blood on its claws and fury in its eyes, but when it looked at the human, its expression softened. Hyunwoo stood up slowly. He was not afraid. Even covered in the guard's blood, even with death in its eyes, he knew the hunter would not hurt him. Thank you, he said simply. The hunter nodded. A small movement, but unmistakable. Above them, alarms were blaring. Emergency lights bathed the arena in red. Talvik's voice was shouting orders through the speakers, but the words were lost in the chaos. Hyunwoo looked up at the viewing boxes where the aliens were fleeing in panic. Then he looked back at the hunter. Want to get out of here? He asked. The hunter's lips pulled back again. But this time it was not showing its teeth in anger. It was smiling. Together, human and hunter turned toward the exits. They had both been prisoners. They had both been forced to fight for others' entertainment, but now they were something else. They were free and they were angry. The hunter knew every corner of Void's Edge. For 3 years it had been dragged through these corridors to fight and kill. Now, for the first time, it was walking these halls by choice. Hyunwoo stayed close to the massive creature as they moved through the station. The hunter's knowledge of the layout was perfect. It led them away from the main corridors where guards would be gathering. Instead, they took maintenance tunnels and service passages that most beings never saw. Behind them, the sounds of chaos grew louder. Alarms screamed through the air. Guard boots pounded on metal floors. Over the station's speakers, Talvik's voice shouted orders in 3 different languages. All units to the arena level. Seal all exits. The hunter has escaped. But they were already far from the arena. The hunter moved through the tunnels like a ghost, its massive form somehow making almost no sound. Hyunwoo tried to copy its movements, staying light on his feet. They reached a junction where several tunnels met. The hunter stopped and listened, its pointed ears swiveling to catch sounds from different directions. Then it looked down at Hyunwoo and pointed with one clawed finger down the left tunnel. The other prisoners? Hyunwoo asked quietly. The hunter nodded. They moved faster now, the hunter's long strides eating up the distance. Soon they were back in the familiar corridors near the prison cells, but these hallways were not empty. Guards were everywhere, some running toward the arena, others setting up defensive positions. The hunter pressed itself against the wall and gestured for Hyunwoo to do the same. They waited as a squad of 6 guards ran past, their armor clanking with each step. When the guards were gone, the hunter stepped into the corridor. It moved to the nearest guard post where 2 aliens sat watching security screens. They never heard it coming. Yunwoo looked away when the hunter struck. He had seen enough death for one day. When he looked back, the hunter was holding a set of keys and access cards taken from the guards. They reached the prison level quickly. The cells were in chaos. Prisoners were shouting questions, demanding to know what was happening. Some had heard the fight in the arena through the station's communication system. Others had only heard the alarms. Yuna was pressed against the energy bars of her cell when she saw them coming. Her eyes went wide when she saw the hunter walking beside Hyunwoo instead of carrying his dead body. "How?" she whispered. "Long story," Hyunwoo said. He took the access cards from the hunter and started opening cells. "Right now we need to move." Dojin stumbled out of his cell, pushing his broken glasses up his nose. "The hunter, it's really not going to kill us?" The hunter looked down at the small engineer. Its massive head tilted slightly, studying him. Then it made that soft sighing sound again and shook its head. More prisoners were emerging from their cells. Humans, mostly, but also a few aliens who had been captured for various crimes. Some of them backed away when they saw the hunter. Others, like Yuna, seemed to understand that something had changed. "We need weapons," Yuna said. She was back in soldier mode, thinking tactically. "And a way off this station." The hunter gestured for them to follow and led the group deeper into the prison level. Here, in a section Hyunwoo had not seen before, were storage rooms. The hunter used its claws to tear open a door marked with alien writing. Inside were weapons. Lots of weapons. Energy rifles, plasma pistols, even some projectile weapons from various worlds. There was also armor and equipment that had been taken from prisoners over the years. "They keep everything," Dojin said, finding a toolkit that looked familiar. "This is mine, from when they captured me." The prisoners quickly armed themselves. Yuna chose an energy rifle she recognized as Earth-made. Hyunwoo found a plasma pistol that felt comfortable in his hand. Even some of the alien prisoners found weapons they knew how to use, but the hunter did not take any weapons. It had its claws. It had its strength. That was enough. "Where's the hangar?" Hyunwoo asked. The hunter pointed upward, then led them to a service lift. They crowded into the small space, the hunter having to crouch to fit. As they rose through the levels of the station, they could hear fighting in the distance. Other prisoners had broken free and were battling guards throughout Void's Edge. The hangar level was massive. Dozens of ships sat in organized rows. Some were patrol vessels from the Confederation. Others were private ships that had been captured. A few were alien designs Hyunwoo did not recognize. "There," Yuna pointed to a sleek ship near the far wall. "That's a Confederation scout ship. Fast engines, good weapons, long range." They started across the hangar floor, but they were not alone. A squad of guards had seen them enter and was moving to intercept. These guards were different from the others. Bigger, better armed. "Elite units. Take the ship," Hyunwoo told the other prisoners. "Get it started." The hunter stepped beside him, understanding without words. Together, they would hold off the guards while the others escaped. The battle was fierce but brief. The guards were well-trained and well-equipped, but they had never faced anything like the hunter fighting alongside a human who trusted it completely. Hyunwoo provided covering fire while the hunter moved like a force of nature, its claws tearing through armor like paper. When the last guard fell, they ran for the ship. The other prisoners had the engines warming up and the weapon systems online. Dojin was in the pilot's seat, his engineer's skills helping him understand the unfamiliar controls. "Everyone aboard," Yuna shouted from the ship's ramp. The hunter started to follow them up the ramp, then stopped. It turned back toward the hangar entrance where more guards were pouring in. These were not just guards. These were security mechs, giant robotic units with enough firepower to level buildings. The hunter looked at Hyunwoo, then at the ship, then back at the approaching mechs. The message was clear. Someone needed to hold them off while the ship launched. Someone big enough and strong enough to buy them time. "No," Hyunwoo said firmly. "We go together or we don't go at all." The hunter shook its massive head. It placed one clawed hand gently on Hyunwoo's shoulder and pushed him toward the ship. "I'm not leaving you," Hyunwoo said. The hunter's eyes were sad but determined. It had spent years killing for others. Now it would kill for itself. For its friends. For the human who had shown it respect. That was when Do-jin's voice came over the ship's speakers. "I've got an idea. Hunter, can you hear me?" The hunter looked up at the ship. "There's a fuel depot on the far side of the hangar. Those big tanks by the wall. If someone could damage them while we're taking off." The hunter understood immediately. It looked at Hyunwoo one more time, then turned and ran toward the fuel depot. Its powerful legs carried it across the hangar floor faster than the security mechs could track. "Get us out of here," Hyunwoo shouted as he dove up the ramp. The ship lifted off just as the hunter reached the fuel tanks. Its claws tore into the metal pipes and storage units. Pressurized fuel began spraying everywhere. The security mechs opened fire, but their energy weapons were exactly the wrong thing to use near explosive fuel. The entire depot went up in a ball of fire that lit up the hangar like a small sun. The explosion threw the ship sideways, but Do-jin fought the controls and kept them flying. They burst through the hangar's atmospheric barrier and into open space. Behind them, Void's edge was burning. Emergency lights flashed along its hull. Escape pods were launching as crew members abandoned the station. "Did the hunter make it out?" one of the prisoners asked. Hyunwoo was watching the scanner displays, looking for any sign of a life pod or small ship that might contain their friend. The screen showed dozens of small craft fleeing the station, but no way to tell which ones might be friendly. Then Yuna pointed out the front window. There. A small maintenance pod was racing away from the station. Through the pod's transparent canopy, they could see a massive figure crammed into the tiny cockpit. The hunter had survived. Do-jin brought their ship alongside the maintenance pod. It took some careful flying, but they managed to dock the two craft together long enough for the hunter to transfer to their ship. When the airlock opened and the hunter stepped through, Hyunwoo felt something he had not felt in a long time. Joy. The massive creature looked around at the rescued prisoners, then at Hyunwoo. Its expression was different now. There was still sadness in its eyes, but also something new. Hope. "Where to?" Do-jin asked from the pilot's seat. Hyunwoo looked at the hunter, then at the other prisoners. They were all free now. All of them had choices to make. "Anywhere but here," he said. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, Void's edge continued to burn behind them. The most notorious prison station in this sector of space was finished. Its reign of terror was over. And somewhere in the stars ahead, a human and a hunter were learning what it meant to be friends. 6 months had passed since the escape from Void's edge. The stolen Confederation scout ship had become home to an unusual crew. Hyunwoo had taken command while Yuna served as his first officer. Do-jin kept the engines running and the systems working. The other rescued prisoners had found their own roles aboard the ship, and the hunter had found a new name. Dae-hyun. Hyunwoo called from the bridge. "Can you come up here?" The massive creature that had once been known only as the hunter looked up from where he had been sitting in the cargo bay. He had been practicing writing Korean letters on a data pad, his huge claws moving carefully to make the small marks. 6 months of living with humans had changed him. He had learned to speak basic Korean and understand most of Standard Galactic. More importantly, he had learned what it felt like to be part of a family. Dae-hyun made his way to the bridge, having to duck through doorways that were too small for his frame. The ship had not been designed for someone his size, but the crew had made modifications. Stronger floors, wider passages, a special chair on the bridge that could hold his weight. "What is it?" Dae-hyun asked. His voice was still deep and rough, but the words came easier now. "We got a message," Hyunwoo said, pointing to the communication console. "From the Galactic Confederation. They want to hire us." Dae-hyun tilted his head. "Hire us for what?" Yuna answered from her station. "There's another prison station, like Void's Edge. They want us to investigate it." "The Confederation knows what we did," Do-jin added from the engineering console. "Word has spread about a human crew with a hunter who fights for justice instead of entertainment." Dae-hyun moved to the large window that looked out at the stars. He was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then he spoke. "Will there be prisoners to free?" "Most likely," Hyunwoo said. "The intelligence reports suggest hundreds of beings held against their will." Dae-hyun nodded slowly. "Then we go." It was always that simple with him now. If someone needed help, Dae-hyun wanted to help them. The creature that had once killed for sport now lived to protect others. The new prison station was called Crimson Depths. It orbited a dead planet in a system far from any major trade routes. Like Void's Edge, it existed in the shadows unknown to most of the galaxy. Unlike Void's Edge, Crimson Depths was ready for them. "They know we're coming," Yuna reported as they dropped out of hyperspace. "I'm detecting patrol ships moving to intercept." "How many?" Hyunwoo asked. 6, no 8. "They're fast attack vessels." Daehyun was already moving toward the weapons console. He had learned to operate most of the ship's systems, though his claws made typing difficult. "I can handle the guns," he said. "No," Hyunwoo said quietly. "We do this together." It had become their way. Hyunwoo made the tactical decisions, but he always included Daehyun in the planning. The hunters' combat instincts combined with human strategy had proven to be devastating to their enemies. The battle was fierce. The patrol ships were well-armed and their pilots skilled, but they had never faced opponents like this before. Hyunwoo's flying combined with Daehyun's perfect timing on the weapons created a team that was greater than the sum of its parts. When the last patrol ship exploded, they approached Crimson Depths carefully. The station was smaller than Void's Edge, but looked more heavily defended. "I'm detecting over 400 life signs inside," Dojin reported, most of them in what looks like prison cells. "And I'm detecting something else," Yuna added. "Energy readings that match Vrex technology. They have more hunters." Daehyun's ears flattened against his head. "How many?" "At least 3, maybe more." Daehyun was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice heavy with sadness. "They will be like I was, angry, confused. They will not understand that there is another way." "Can you talk to them?" Hyunwoo asked. "I can try. But they may not listen. The Vrex conditioning is strong. It takes time to break free from it." They docked with the station using a maintenance port that Dojin had hacked. The plan was simple. Daehyun would go to the arena levels and try to communicate with the other hunters. The rest of the team would free the prisoners and secure the ship's hangar. But plans rarely survived contact with the enemy. The station's security was better than Void's Edge. They had barely made it past the docking bay when alarms began blaring. Guards appeared from hidden positions and blast doors started sealing off sections of the station. "They were waiting for us," Yuna said as she took cover behind a support beam. "How did they know?" Dojin asked. The answer came from the station's speakers, a familiar voice that made Daehyun growl with rage. "Welcome to Crimson Depths," said Warden Talvek. "Did you think I would not prepare for your arrival?" Talvek had survived the destruction of Void's Edge. Somehow he had escaped and found his way here, and he had been waiting. "You destroyed my station," the warden's voice continued. "You cost me millions of credits. You ruined my reputation. But now I have something better. I have 3 hunters who are loyal to me, and I have a trap specifically designed for you." Energy barriers slammed down around them, cutting off their escape routes. Guards moved in from 3 directions, forcing them toward the center of the station, toward the arena. They fought every step of the way, but there were too many guards and too few of them. Eventually, they found themselves in a large chamber with no way out. At the center of the chamber was a pit similar to the one on Void's Edge, but bigger. And in that pit were 3 creatures that looked like Daehyun. The other hunters were chained, but their chains were longer. They had more room to move, more room to hunt. Hunter against hunter. Talvek's voice echoed through the chamber. "Let us see if your friendship can survive against the loyalty of my champions." The other hunters looked up at Daehyun and his human companions. Their eyes held no recognition, no understanding, only hunger. "Daehyun," Hyunwoo said quietly, "we need to get down there." "They will try to kill you," Daehyun replied. "They cannot help it. It is what they were made to do." "Then you'll have to help them remember who they really are." Daehyun looked at his friend. This small human had taught him so much. About choice, about friendship, about what it meant to be more than just a weapon. "Stay behind me," Daehyun said. They jumped down into the pit together. The 3 hunters immediately moved to attack, but they stopped when they saw Daehyun. Confusion flickered in their eyes. He looked like them, but he was with the prey instead of hunting it. Daehyun spoke to them in the language of the Vrex labs, words he had not used in months. He told them about freedom, about choice, about humans who showed respect instead of fear. The first hunter listened for a moment, then attacked anyway. Its conditioning was too strong. Daehyun fought back, but he was careful not to hurt it too badly. He was trying to subdue, not kill. The second hunter joined the fight, then the third. Soon Dae-hyun was battling all three while trying to protect Hyun-woo and the others. It looked hopeless. Dae-hyun was strong but not strong enough to fight three of his own kind at once. That was when Hyun-woo did something that surprised everyone. He walked into the middle of the fight. "Stop," he said calmly. The three hunters turned to look at him. Here was prey walking directly toward them. It made no sense. "Look at him," Hyun-woo said, pointing to Dae-hyun. "Look at your brother. He was like you once, chained, angry, used as a weapon, but he chose to be something else." One of the hunters tilted its head, listening. "You can choose too," Hyun-woo continued. "You don't have to be what they made you. You can be who you want to be." Dae-hyun stood beside his friend, bloody but unbroken. "They speak truth," he said to his fellow hunters. "I have seen other worlds. I have learned other ways. We do not have to kill to survive." The hunters looked at each other. Then they looked at the humans who stood unafraid in their presence. Slowly, one by one, they sat down. Above them, Talvek was screaming orders through the speakers. But the hunters were no longer listening to him. They were listening to something else. Something they had never heard before. Their own hearts. The fight was not over. Talvek still had guards and weapons and the will to use them. But something had changed in that arena. 4 creatures who had been created to kill had chosen to protect instead. And standing among them, a human captain smiled as he watched friendship triumph over programming. Later, after the station was secured and the prisoners freed, Hyun-woo found Dae-hyun sitting in the ship's cargo bay. The other 3 hunters were with him, learning Korean words and practicing writing letters. "What will you call them?" Hyun-woo asked. Dae-hyun looked at his new brothers. "They will choose their own names," he said, "when they are ready." Hyun-woo nodded and turned to leave, but Dae-hyun's voice stopped him. "Thank you," the hunter said. "For what?" "For seeing who I really was. Even when I did not know myself," Hyun-woo smiled. "That's what friends do." As their ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying its unusual crew toward their next mission, Dae-hyun curled up on the bridge floor near Hyun-woo's chair. The massive creature that had once been the galaxy's most feared killer now served as a loyal guardian, watching over the humans who had taught him the meaning of choice. In the vast darkness between stars, friendship had proven stronger than programming. Love had conquered fear, and somewhere in the galaxy other prison stations were beginning to worry about a human captain.